While a lot has been written about what happened after her death, not much is widely known about the events and circumstances leading up to it. Today, we're diving deeper to uncover and share 20 intriguing insights about the Queen's final days and the moments leading up to her farewell. Number 20. Declining health. Queen Elizabeth II had been dealing with health challenges for quite some time before her passing on September 8, 2022. The year itself proved to be particularly tough for her in this regard. In February, she tested positive for COVID-19, which, while causing only mild symptoms, sparked widespread concern throughout Britain. Despite being fully vaccinated and having received a booster shot, her age, 95 at the time, placed her in a high-risk category. To prioritize her well-being, the royal palace scaled back her responsibilities, allowing her to focus on lighter duties at Windsor Castle. However, despite these adjustments, only some things could be managed or resolved behind palace doors, and her health continued to decline over the following months. Number 19. A grieving widow. In addition to her age and declining health, Queen Elizabeth II was also carrying the weight of a deeply broken heart. Her husband of 73 years, Prince Philip, passed away in 2021 at the age of 99, leaving the Queen devastated. Despite her immense grief, she continued fulfilling her royal duties, though it was clear she carried on with a heavy heart. Many believe that her sorrow played a significant role in her decline, with some even suggesting that her death was, in part, due to a broken heart. This idea becomes even more poignant when you consider the touching detail of their final resting place. Prince Philip's coffin was initially placed in the royal vault, but was moved to the King George VI Memorial Chapel to rest beside the Queen after her passing. It's as though the monarch had planned their final journey together, ensuring that even in death, they would remain side by side, just as they had been throughout their extraordinary lives. Number 18. Unwavering commitment to her duties. Even in the face of immense personal loss and declining health, Queen Elizabeth II remained steadfast in her commitment to her royal responsibilities. After Prince Philip's death, she continued to carry out her day-to-day duties, a testament to her resilience and dedication. However, as time went on, the toll on her health became evident. In March 2022, for the first time in 60 years, the Queen was unable to attend the state opening of Parliament due to mobility issues. Instead, the Prince of Wales stepped in to deliver her speech, a poignant moment in her reign. This was only the third time she missed the event, with the first two being during her pregnancies with Prince Andrew in 1959 and Prince Edward in 1963. Remarkably, even in her final days, the Queen was fulfilling her role. Just 2 days before her passing, she carried out one of her most significant constitutional duties, formally dismissing Prime Minister Boris Johnson and appointing Liz Truss as his successor. The ceremony, held at Balmoral Castle rather than Buckingham Palace, reflected her adaptability to her circumstances. According to Truss, the Queen was sharp and engaged during their meeting, even using a walking stick to get around. Some close to her suggested that, with this final act, the Queen felt she had completed her duties and was at peace, ready to let go. Her dedication to her role, right until the very end, remains one of the defining marks of her extraordinary reign. Number 17. Last days at Balmoral Castle. In her final days, Queen Elizabeth II spent most of her time at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, a place she held dear. She had been staying there since July 21, 2022, and many royal experts believe the decision to move was tied to the wealth of cherished memories the property held for her. Despite her declining health, reports suggest the Queen was as lively as ever during her time there. From spending time shooting with her cousins to enjoying her favorite weatherman on TV, she seemed to embrace her usual routines. Photographs from those days showed a Queen who was genuinely enjoying herself. In one memorable moment, she surprised everyone by declaring a relaxed, informal dinner for her Bowes-Lyon cousins, breaking away from the usual royal formalities of black ties and evening gowns. She even declined the traditional bagpipes for the evening, a rare break from tradition for someone so famously professional. This unexpected shift in protocol raised a few eyebrows, but as Queen, her word was final. It seems Balmoral Castle, with its deep ties to her heart and her love for Scotland, was the perfect place for her to spend her last days. enjoying the moments of simplicity and joy she so deserved. Number 16. Liz Truss is the first to know. Started as a normal, albeit busy day for Liz Truss, who was deeply involved in a debate on the ongoing energy crisis at the House of Commons. But everything took a sudden and dramatic turn when she was discreetly handed a note at noon. The contents of that note would soon ripple through the monarchy and the nation. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Truss quickly left the debate, leaving both politicians and the public puzzled. What could possibly have prompted the newly appointed Prime Minister to step away from such an important discussion? The mystery was short-lived. Just 20 minutes later, Buckingham Palace issued a statement announcing that the Queen's doctors were deeply concerned about her health. While the statement reassured that the Queen was comfortable and resting at Balmoral, the combination of Truss's sudden exit and the Queen's recent health struggles had the public fearing the worst. Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, also received a note about the situation during the debate, heightening the sense of unease. As the news of the Queen's condition began to spread, Truss took to Twitter in an effort to steady the public's nerves. Still, it was clear to many that the monarchy was facing a critical and uncertain moment. Number 15. The Queen's last dinner. In the days leading up to her passing, everything seemed normal, even joyful, for Queen Elizabeth II. The night before her sudden illness, she enjoyed a lovely dinner at Balmoral Castle, sharing laughter and cracking jokes with those around her. There was no sign of her health taking a turn for the worse, leaving the public shocked by the rapid events that followed. By midnight, however, the Queen's condition had worsened dramatically. Her caregivers acted swiftly, transferring her to a medical station where a team of top doctors monitored her closely, making every effort to stabilize her. Sadly, their efforts could not stop her decline. As her blood oxygen levels dropped, it became clear to both her family and the public that the situation was grave. Elizabeth II, Britain's longest reigning monarch, was in a critical fight for her life. Across the country, her subjects anxiously awaited news, holding their breath as they hoped for the best, but braced for the worst. On a comforting note, the Queen was not alone in her final hours, surrounded by care and love during this difficult time. Number 14. Family members rushed to her side. As the Queen's health began to decline, her children and extended family were immediately called to Balmoral Castle. Family members quickly gathered, with even those abroad making their way to be by her side. Prince Charles and Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, were the first to arrive since they were already in Scotland. But instead of driving, they hopped on a helicopter from Dumfries House to reach Balmoral more quickly. Princess Anne was also already in Scotland, so she was able to get there without delay. The fact that the royal family members were either nearby or able to arrive so quickly seemed almost like fate, ensuring the Queen was surrounded by her loved ones in her final moments. Number 13. The public's prayers. As the Queen's condition continued to worsen, royal family members arrived to find Her Majesty struggling to hold on. By this time, the public had also caught on to what was happening. With family members rushing to Balmoral, it was clear this wasn't just another health scare. Although they couldn't make it to Balmoral Castle, the Queen's loyal subjects did the next best thing. They gathered outside Buckingham Palace. People left flowers, lit candles, and prayed, hoping their gestures would somehow give the Queen a fighting chance. Some in the crowd seemed to sense the gravity of the situation, but they remained there, waiting for news on Her Majesty's health. Even the heavy rain couldn't send them home, as they stayed by the gates, holding on to hope. Number 12. The Queen's health deteriorates. Sadly, despite the well wishes from thousands of her devoted subjects, Queen Elizabeth's condition continued to decline. Her medical team worked tirelessly to find a solution as her vital signs dropped rapidly. By around 3 p.m., it seemed like hope was fading, but the Queen remained remarkably strong. Even in the face of such hardship, she put on a brave face and fought fiercely during her final moments. However, even the Queen couldn't defeat death. At exactly 3:10 p.m., Her Majesty's heart stopped beating. Dr. Douglas Glass, the doctor overseeing her care in Scotland, pronounced her dead, noting that the cause of death was old age. While the news devastated many, Dr. Glass revealed that he had seen this day coming months earlier. Number 11. London Bridge is down. With the Queen passing away, the royal family members began arriving at Balmoral Castle. Prince William landed at Aberdeen Airport at 4 p.m., leaving behind Catherine and their 3 children at their home. He was soon joined by the Duke of York, the Earl, and the Countess of Wessex by 5 p.m. Prince Harry, who had been attending the Well Child Charity Awards in London, cancelled his plans and quickly flew to Scotland, while Meghan stayed behind at Frogmore Cottage in Windsor. It was a strange coincidence that the couple was already in the UK for charity engagements when the news broke. The public wouldn't hear of the Queen's passing until about an hour and 25 minutes later, after every royal family member had been informed. Prince Charles, who was at Aberdeen Airport at 6:45 p.m., reportedly had difficulty reaching Harry at first, but that was later clarified. Harry arrived at Balmoral Castle at 7:52 p.m. By then, King Charles had already paid tribute to the nation's beloved monarch. Meanwhile, the palace staff worked tirelessly, calling all necessary individuals, including the Chief of the Defense Staff, the High Commissioners of the 14 countries under Her Majesty's rule, and urgent communications with the Prime Ministers. In an effort to mark the gravity of the moment, Buckingham Palace lowered its flag to half-mast, signaling the dark day in the country's history. Number 10. The public grieves outside the palace. The news of Queen Elizabeth II's death spread quickly, and the crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace in disbelief. Many had been waiting for hours, hoping for an update, but when the inevitable news came, it was hard to accept. Some were too stunned to speak, while others openly wept. The loss was profound. Many had never known a Britain without her. As grief poured out, the people of London made their way to Buckingham Palace. In an act of solemn respect, cab drivers formed a guard of honor along the Mall, keeping their lights on. The overwhelming sense of loss was palpable, but amid the sorrow, there was a glimmer of hope offered by Mother Nature. That evening, 2 rainbows appeared in the skies, one above Buckingham Palace, another over Windsor Castle. It was a touching, if fleeting, symbol of continuity and resilience. In a spontaneous show of solidarity, the gathered crowd began to sing "God Save the Queen," the national anthem that had long united the nation. The collective grief turned into a moment of shared tribute, an unspoken farewell to the monarch who had reigned for so long. News outlets around the world interrupted regular programming, reporting the passing of the Queen, marking it as one of the most shocking moments of the year. The mourning was global, with the loss deeply felt not just in the UK, but across the world. Number 9. Operation Unicorn. With Queen Elizabeth II's passing, the meticulously planned protocols were set into motion, and Operation Unicorn, the first phase of the broader Operation London Bridge, was triggered. Balmoral Castle, where the Queen had spent her final days, was not to be her final resting place. Instead, the journey to honor her began. On September 11th at 10:46 a.m., the Queen's casket left Balmoral Castle, draped in the Scottish version of the Royal Standard of the United Kingdom, with a wreath of flowers placed atop. Princess Anne and Sir Timothy Lawrence accompanied the casket on the 175-mile journey through Aberdeenshire, Angus, Dundee, and beyond, as large crowds lined the route, eager for a final glimpse of their beloved monarch. After hours of travel, the procession arrived at the Palace of Holyrood House at 4:23 p.m., where the Queen's casket was temporarily placed in the throne room. The following day, on September 12th, the casket was moved to St. Giles's Cathedral for a service of thanksgiving, honoring her deep connection with Scotland. During this time, 33,000 people came to pay their respects as they filed past her casket. That evening, Princess Anne held a vigil by the Queen's side, before the casket was transported to London by a Royal Air Force C-17 Globemaster. Upon arrival in London, the Scottish Royal Standard was replaced with the non-Scottish version of the Royal Standard as the next phase of the monarch's journey began. Number 8. Lying in state. The next phase of Operation London Bridge involved the Queen's casket being transported to Westminster Hall, where she would lie in state. The procession was marked by solemn moments, with Big Ben tolling and the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery firing their guns as the casket made its way to Westminster Hall from Buckingham Palace. Upon arrival, members of the 3 armed forces took over the ceremonial duties at Parliament Square. Soldiers from the Queen's Company, 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards, were responsible for placing the casket on a catapult within Westminster Hall. A service of reverence was held under the supervision of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Dean of Westminster, with the royal family in attendance. From September 14th to September 19th, the Queen's casket remained at Westminster Hall, where the sovereign's bodyguard and household division stood vigilant. The hall was open to the public, allowing 250,000 mourners to pay their respects in person. The queue stretched over 10 miles, with some waiting up to 25 hours to catch a final glimpse of the Queen. For those unable to visit in person, live streams were made available so people around the world could join in the mourning. On the evening of September 16th, King Charles and his siblings participated in a vigil at the casket, followed on September 17th by the Queen's 8 grandchildren, each taking their turn to honor their grandmother. The national grief and devotion continued as the Queen's memory was deeply cherished by the public. Number 7. The state funeral. Following the period of lying in state, the next major task was to organize the Queen's state funeral. Fortunately, the plans for such an event had been carefully prepared and discussed with the Queen since the 1960s, so it was a matter of following established guidelines. The responsibility for overseeing the funeral arrangements fell to Earl Marshall, and the Foreign Office took charge of sending out invitations to 500 foreign dignitaries and heads of state. Given the significance of the occasion, the Foreign Office enlisted 300 staff members from their headquarters, known as the Hangar, to ensure every detail was meticulously managed. The day of the funeral was declared a public holiday, with local banks and the London Stock Exchange closing to honor the occasion. The city underwent thorough preparations to accommodate the influx of mourners, including extra train services and extensive cleaning. On September 19th, the Queen's casket was transported to Westminster Abbey. The procession to the Abbey was conducted by the state gun carriage of the Royal Navy. As the procession moved along, the tenor bell of Westminster Abbey tolled once every minute for 96 minutes, one for each year of the Queen's life. The casket arrived at Westminster Abbey at 10:52 a.m., marking the beginning of the next phase in the funeral proceedings. Number 6. The day of the funeral. On September 19th, the funeral for one of the most significant rulers in history, Queen Elizabeth II, took place. The service began at 11 a.m. with the Dean of Westminster, David Hoyle, leading the ceremony. The service followed the 1662 Book of Common Prayer, with readings by Prime Minister Liz Truss and Baroness Scotland, Secretary-General of the Commonwealth. The Archbishop of Canterbury delivered the sermon. During the service, the music included Like as the Heart by Judith Weir and Who Shall Separate Us by James Macmillan, pieces which held special significance as they had been featured in the Queen's coronation and wedding. As the service drew to a close, the last post was played, followed by a 2-minute silence. The national anthem was performed, concluding the funeral with a poignant bagpipe rendition of Sleep, Dearie, Sleep. This marked the end of a historic and emotional service for the late Queen. Honorable mention: a never-seen-before picture of the Queen. One of the Queen's followers sent in a never-before-seen picture of Queen Elizabeth II. However, the follower forgot to provide an explanation. In the image, the Queen appears to have red eyes and seems to be crying. This could be attributed to the profound sadness she may have felt after the passing of her beloved husband, Prince Philip. Their bond was deeply personal, and his death in 2021 was a significant loss for Her Majesty. The second image in question raises another intriguing thought. Was it truly the Queen in that particular photo? Given the Queen's exceptional work ethic and unwavering dedication to her royal duties, it's possible that the image was taken during a particularly emotional moment, showing her vulnerability in an otherwise public role. What do you think? Have you ever visited Buckingham Palace or experienced the presence of the royal family in any way? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Number 5. The processions. Following the funeral. After the funeral service, the next phase of the Queen's farewell began, the journey of her casket to Wellington Arch. This was an important moment as the state gun carriage, which had been used for royal funerals, was drawn by 98 Royal Navy sailors, something that hadn't been done in practice since the funeral of Sir Winston Churchill in 1965. As the procession moved along, it passed Queen Victoria's Memorial, where the soldiers paused to give a royal salute. At Wellington Arch, the casket was transferred to the state hearse, which would begin the journey to Windsor. In Windsor, another procession had already formed from Albert Road. The two processions combined, totaling about 1,000 military personnel, making their way to St. George's Chapel. Thousands of onlookers lined the route, paying their respects. Among the crowd were the Queen's loyal pets, her fell pony, Emma, and her two corgis, Sandy and Muick, standing as silent witnesses to the historic procession. Finally, the procession reached the west steps of St. George's Chapel, where the casket was gently moved inside for the next part of her journey. Number 4. The Committal Service. At 4 p.m., the committal service began at St. George's Chapel in Windsor with King Charles and the royal family present. The Dean of Windsor read from Revelation 21, 1-7, the same verses used at the funerals of the Queen's grandparents, King George III in 1936, Queen Mary in 1953, and her father, King George VI in 1952. The service was led by the rector of Sandringham, the minister of Cray Kirk, and the chaplain of Windsor Great Park, who offered prayers along with the chapel choir. As the service neared its conclusion, the imperial state crown, the orb, and the scepter were removed from the Queen's casket and placed on the altar. The final hymn was sung, and then King Charles rose and placed the Queen's company camp color of the Grenadier Guards on the casket. The Lord Chamberlain broke the wand of office and placed it on the coffin as well, signaling the end of the formal service. The casket was then lowered into the royal vault, a moment watched by millions around the world as the Queen was laid to rest. The Dean of Windsor marked the occasion with a psalm, followed by the commendation. The Garter King of Arms took a moment to announce the Queen's styles and titles. The national anthem played, signaling the conclusion of the public portion of the funeral proceedings. However, the Queen's burial was a private ceremony attended only by her closest family members. At 7:30 p.m., she was interred beneath the King George VI Memorial Chapel, which also houses the remains of her father, King George VI, her mother, Queen Elizabeth, and her sister, Princess Margaret. The Queen was finally reunited with her family in the vault, in a specially constructed coffin made of English oak and lined with lead for protection from moisture, crafted more than 30 years before her death. Number 3. The New King. With the passing of the People's Queen, the mantle of leadership passed to King Charles III. The weight of expectation was heavy, as he now bore the responsibility of guiding the monarchy forward while honoring his mother's legacy. King Charles had much to prove, not only to the British people but to the world, as he stepped into this monumental role. In his first speech as king, His Majesty acknowledged the immense legacy left behind by Queen Elizabeth II. He spoke with deep respect for his mother's life, calling it a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept. The king reflected on the sorrow her death brought to the nation, expressing how profoundly she would be missed. At the same time, King Charles reassured the people that he was committed to continuing the royal promise of lifelong service, renewing his dedication to the responsibilities that lay ahead. His speech was a moment of both reflection and resolve, as he promised to serve with the same devotion that his mother had. Number 2. A look at Her Majesty's early life. The funeral processions for Queen Elizabeth II were a true testament to the incredible life she led and the immense contributions she made to her country. As a monarch, she served her subjects with unwavering devotion, handling even the most complex situations with remarkable wisdom. However, beyond her role as queen, she was also a mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Born Elizabeth Alexandra Mary on April 21, 1926, her place in the royal family seemed distant from the throne. At the time, few could have anticipated that she would one day become queen, as she was far down the line of succession. However, fate intervened in 1936 with the death of her grandfather, King George V, followed by her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicating the throne. This unexpected turn of events led to her father, King George VI, ascending to the throne, thus making Elizabeth the heir apparent. Even with this newfound responsibility, the Queen remained humble and grounded. During World War II, she became actively involved in public service, demonstrating a deep commitment to her country. Over time, she emerged as a respected and beloved figure, earning her place in the hearts of the public. In 1947, the Queen married Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten, a union that would endure for over 7 decades. Just 5 years later, following her father's passing, she ascended to the throne at the young age of 25. With a sense of duty and dedication to her people, she accepted the monumental responsibility of leading the nation. Throughout her reign, Queen Elizabeth tirelessly traveled the world, met with foreign dignitaries, and served as patron to over 600 charities. At the same time, she balanced her royal duties with raising her family, always putting service and dedication first. Number 1. Putting on a brave face. Throughout her reign, Queen Elizabeth II never faltered in her duty to the people, even as a mother and matriarch. She gracefully balanced the responsibilities of ruling a monarchy with the needs of her family. However, being a monarch came with its fair share of challenges. If you had asked the Queen to name the most difficult year of her 70-year reign, she would have pointed to 1992, a year she famously referred to as the Annus Horribilis. That year, the royal family faced multiple crises. Prince Andrew and his wife Sarah announced their separation, as did Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Princess Anne also went through a divorce, and to top it off, Windsor Castle suffered a devastating fire. In her own words, Queen Elizabeth remarked, "1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure." The country, too, was going through tough times, grappling with a recession. In response to the economic struggles and to address public sentiment, the Queen made the historic decision to pay taxes on her income, a move that was widely applauded. However, it wasn't enough to fully repair the tarnished image of the royal family, particularly in the wake of the tumultuous relationship between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Despite the challenges, Queen Elizabeth persevered. She reached several milestones, including her Golden Jubilee in 2002 and her Diamond Jubilee in 2012, celebrating remarkable years on the throne. In 2017, after Prince Philip's retirement, she too began to take a step back. In June 2022, she marked her Platinum Jubilee before sadly passing away that September. Her reign, marked by grace, elegance, and resilience, left an indelible mark on history, one that will not soon be forgotten. Thank you for joining us on this journey through her extraordinary life.